My name is Sari van Pooijen. I'm the director of Intact Academy and of Agile Business Innovation. Mostly, I help businesses innovate more quickly than their products to accelerate their time to market. If you want to know more about that, go to agilebusinessinnovation.com. For the programs, go to www.intactacademy.com and you can register online. So we're talking about team coaching and about what is a team, what is team coaching, what are the levels of diagnosis. And I really want to continue that because it's so important to understand where teams are stuck so that your interventions become a bullet instead of a shot of hail. So it's better to be really direct about what you're aiming for with a team instead of being very broad and trying to hit a moving target, as it were. I talked about the diagnostic diagrams that Eric Berne uses in his book, Structure and Dynamics of Teams, of Groups and Organizations. I want to go a bit deeper into that because it's not just the levels you have to look at, it's also the link between the levels that's really important if you want to understand where teams are stuck. We talked about the structural level, the relational level, and the psychodynamic level. The structure is about boundaries, hierarchy, roles, and processes, especially decision-making processes. The relational level is really about dynamics, personas, informal structure, so informal leadership mostly, and influence. And the third level, the psychodynamic level, is about imago, about transference, about transactions and personality. When we look at those levels separately, we can see the photograph. But you have to understand that a problem at the structural level causes problems at the relational and the psychodynamic level. I'll give an example. If two roles are unclear and they overlap, of course, the people in those roles at the relational level will have conflict about who has the power, who has the influence, whose work is it, and that causes problems perhaps at the psychodynamic level for them because it reminds them of conflicts they've had before. So the relationship between the levels is also important. As my physiotherapist says, if you have a pain here, it means that your hip is not aligned. So that's the way a team works as well. At the structural level, if we take them one by one, it's important to understand what Eric Berne meant by boundaries, by roles, and by power, in a way. I am going. So if you look at those three things and the relationship between them, you need an in-depth knowledge of what each level means. At the structural level, when we talk about boundaries, I've already talked about those in a specific blog. But when you talk about roles, people often ask me, what roles do you look at? Do you mean job descriptions? Or no, I don't mean that. So within transactional analysis, we talk only of three types of roles. We talk about leadership, we talk about membership, and we talk about apparatus. Strangely enough, it sounds almost Russian, but really it was meant to mean the functions that support the leadership. In an organization, for instance, the leadership, is the hierarchical leadership in the structure. The membership are the people who report to the leaders. And the apparatus are, for instance, HR, IT, finance, all those advisory functions in an organization which help the leaders decide if what they want is possible. So in the leadership, we really talk about three types of leadership, which is interesting because it kind of mixes the structure and the relational and the psychodynamic. So Berne talked about responsible leadership in the structure, the people who are formally responsible. He talked about effective leadership at the relational level, so the people who really have the influence. And he talked about historical leadership, the euhemerus, the people who founded the team, perhaps, but that's more the psychodynamic. So who is there influencing the imago of people of the group? When we do changes just at the role level in a team, it means that you're working with a responsible leader. You have to create an alliance with the informal leader, but you have to take into account that in the background, people's ideas of leadership, of who is the true leader of that team, can differ. I remember reading an interview with Michael Eisner from Disney, and the mistakes he'd made in his maiden speech. After 100 days, he stood up in front of the Disney executives, apparently, and he said, we are in difficult times in Walt Disney. Walt Disney is dead, so we have to think about what to do. And what he completely underestimated was Walt Disney is, of course, the euhemerus of Disney. And so people were still referring to him as the father of the company. So if in your maiden speech you decide to say the father is dead, long live the father, long live the king, as it were, you're going to piss a lot of people off. So his maiden speech was not a great success, and he didn't last very long. Of course, he had the problems with Disney Paris as well. But, you know, something happened in that team the moment he said that. As a team coach, what you look at in terms of roles is leadership, membership, apparatus. In terms of leadership, you're looking at different levels of leadership. Which leadership is most powerful in that team? And if that leadership is very powerful, you have to create an alliance with that type of leadership to create change. The question is not, is Walt Disney still alive? The question is, what would Walt Disney do if he were alive now? And that way you can create momentum for change in a team. The second role we look at within the diagnostic is membership. Membership is an interesting thing because a member is someone who, of course, has accepted the formal contract of membership. So, you know, in business, you just sign a working contract on paper, but rarely does it happen that that's actually what you do within a team. So there's also what we call an informal contract. The more I work with team coaching, the more I think there are actually 3 contracts that you're influencing as a member, but also 3 contracts that you have to take into account as a team coach. One is the purpose contract. So why does the team exist? What can they do that nobody else can do? The second is really the work contract. So what are they doing? The first is the why contract, the second is the what contract. And the third is the how contract, which is more at the relational level of membership, which is how are we going to work together to make sure the purpose is realized. When we talk about membership, and when you look at membership diagnostically, what you have to think about is, are these the right members? Are they in the right place? But also, do they have the right contract in mind? Diagnostically, that's really interesting. Some people are really attached to the product, so the what, but they don't have a how contract. So they don't have what we call a cooperation contract together, which means that they're all in it to do their own thing. Very interesting to look at that diagnostically. The apparatus diagnostically, what I find usually in my work is that they don't really know their position in the structure. And that causes a lot of problems in the relational level and the psychodynamic level. For instance, HR often, and I can say this because I was HR very often, thinks they have more power if they're in the management team and can co-decide what happens in a team. I actually believe that's not true. Anyone who's in the apparatus is actually, if this is the higher leadership and this is the direct reports, the apparatus should be here in between. So the leader decides in the line management, what are we going to do? And the HR and the finance and the IT have the responsibility to say, is it possible to do it? So they have a very strong power, which they give away kind of if they confuse their role with a deciding task, because they're actually advisory. And you have, if you play that role really well in a team, you have much more power in a different way than in that line function. So when I look at advisory functions, so the apparatus functions in a diagnostic fashion, I often look at how are they positioning themselves? You know, are they playing their role to the full? At the relational level for the apparatus, I often look at are they able to manage a network of connections? Because obviously as apparatus, you don't have direct power. You have to have functional leadership. So you influence through your advisory function in the structure. And you have to be able to manage that network of relationships and negotiate really well in the relationship. At a psychodynamic level, I often see, or at this imago level, I often see that the status of an advisory function is often overlooked in a team. So it seems like the real work is done in this line function, and they're kind of forgotten in their importance. I do believe, again, you know, because they're not taking their rightful role in the structure, it causes problems in the imago. And that says something about the order of intervention, which we'll talk about later. So we're talking about diagnostics, we're talking about structure, and we're talking about, hey, you have to look at the different levels, but also the relationship between the levels. And at the moment, we're talking about roles. I could do a whole team coaching based just on a diagnostic of roles and how they play out at the different levels. It's interesting for you perhaps to do the same. What is the organizational chart like? That's kind of the roles in the formal way. What is playing out in these roles in the informal structure? So who has the influence? And then think about who has the influence under normal circumstances, but really look at who has the influence under crisis, because then you can really see the informal structure at work. And then think about what roles are there in that group imago. If people draw a picture of the team, which roles appear in that picture? And if they forget the apparatus, you know where to start your team coaching. Good luck.